Major Manik Jolly, Colonel Shukla arguing that there is a plan but there is no will. Can I counter argue to say that even if there is will, is there a plan that seems strong enough to be able to pull this off? Because remember, unlike the Balakot surgical strikes or the Uri surgical strike, this isn't a limited special forces operation. This involves mountain strike corps. This involves going into someone else's territory which is defended, where the armies are reasonably equally paired, the Indian army superior, but not with the kind of extent required to be able to dominate the enemy in that kind of mountainous terrain. Can such a plan, in your view, be pulled off?
Hi Rahul, thanks and Jai Hind to all the seniors there. I think one thing I'd like to clarify, I really wanted to say on that, when Colonel Shukla said that statement of Northern Army Commander was political, I think on the contrary, that was very military. It's very easy to get pulled into rhetorics and jingoist statements when reporter is asking you what do you think of taking POK. But rather he stated it exactly as a mature general of a large army would, that this is as per the resolution and we will carry out whatever orders are given to us. So I think that was pretty military. Coming back to your question, I think I have very senior officers, the GOCs here, and they know the plans much better. In my limited experience, whatever I understood, it can definitely be pulled off. There is absolutely no doubt. The Indian Army lives on the confidence that, it is not just about making grand statements. The day the order is given, Indian Army will pull it off, and all our generals have created brilliant plans around it. But I would also like to add that the war is now not so much limited to a country versus country kind of a thing. I think if I was sitting there, why India is changing statements, why these POK things are coming, because somehow the situation in the region are maturing where India can talk about it. With Afghanistan happening, then the China is getting pulled into Taiwan, then the pressure on the US, on Iran and China both, then Pakistan imploding itself, the instability in the economy, the political, downfall, the military order, the fight. So if I was looking at it very objectively and I had a checklist of when I should do this, this sounds like a pretty good time. But I still say this is,
okay. So let me build on that with Saikar Datta. Pakistan is in turmoil. Imran Khan is banging the gates of Islamabad. You've got China very clearly obsessed with the idea of taking over Taiwan. At this point in time, you've had multiple military generals and the defense minister talk about this. Are you reading this as a change in strategy? Do you agree with General Bakshi's assertion that you're changing the narrative? We're not talking about what happens to Jammu and Kashmir. You're putting Pakistan in the defensive, talking about going and taking POK, whether you ultimately go out and do it or not. It changes the narrative very dramatically.
Yes, it's just...
thank you, Rahul. I have 4 points to make and I'll be very quick about it. To answer your specific question that have things changed dramatically, I don't think they have. Let me also preface by saying that what the defense minister has said and what the Northern Army commander has said, both of them are perfectly right in what they are saying. The defense minister has reiterated India's historical stance, and as your program mentioned that in 1994 the Indian Parliament also passed a resolution. That is a historical fact, and there is no doubt that India continues to assert its right to illegally occupied Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. What the general has said, the Northern Army commander has been absolutely professional. If any political order is given, the Indian Army prides in the fact that it is under civilian control and it's a professional army. Given any order, it will execute to the best of its ability. But the 4 points that I do want to make is that currently, if you look at the situation, if you look at the Ladakh region, and if you see the Chinese presence, which has dramatically increased post-2020, and you've seen what happened in Galwan, etc. Our reaction to Galwan and our ability to push back the Chinese has not been optimum. And the area which is known as Subsector North has traditionally been held by, it's supposed to be held by a division worth of troops, but usually practically only about a brigade handles that. And post Galwan, we have had to push in more troops and maintain a balance of power to keep the Chinese at bay while we have finished 16 rounds of talks. And yet we have not seen any major change within there. Any planned offensive would very possibly ignite a two-front war. And also remember that there is an illegally ceded territory given by the Pakistanis to the Chinese in PoK, which means you are not directly attacking what the Chinese claim and believe is their territory. So you will be looking at a two-front war. Secondly, the program is filled with mostly army generals, but if you were to also bring in another sister service, the Air Force, and you have seen what happened post Balakot, our own troops blew out our own helicopter, and there was an utter confusion there. You also have the example of the Kargil war. Just to vacate those heights, we lost over nearly 500 of our troops. So any offensive in those parts will need tremendous amounts of manpower, because you need a minimum of 9:1 ratio in those parts. Secondly, the second point is that, is the Indian Army fully modernized? It will always, you see, the men, you cannot doubt our men or our generals. They're tremendous and very professional. But do they have enough equipment? Is their modernization optimum to carry out this kind of an operation? Because any operation here will inevitably lead to all-out war. And if you see what's happening with the Russian tanks in Ukraine and so on and so forth, things will not be very easy. Third is, look at the economic climate. You cannot dissociate warfare from the economic climate. The whole world is going into a recession. India is one of the few bright spots within that economic gloom that we are looking at. Do we want to lose out on that at the cost of an all-out war, which will not only exhaust us economically, which will also create all sorts of other things? And finally, if you look at the kind of situation that we are in, there are many options which we could do and create tons and tons of trouble in these areas without launching a full-scale